Seth with Glowe here. In today's video, we're going to be comparing 4 different styles of crimper that I see used frequently. We have a hammer crimper, a lever style crimper, a hydraulic crimper, and finally a powered hydraulic crimper. This is the hammer crimper. It works by placing your lug underneath the pin and hitting the top with a hammer. I'll be using a 27-ounce dead blow hammer in combination with this piece for today's video. This is the lever style crimper we got. In my opinion, these are definitely the most difficult to use and can take considerable amounts of force to use correctly. You set your lug size by pressing in on the mechanism up here by the die, and you rotate it until it's the size that you need. The various sizes are engraved on each piece when you spin it. We'll be testing today a size 50 as well as one size lower, which is 35 for all of today's testing. Next up, we have our hydraulic crimpers. These feel like a big step up from the previous types mentioned and are considerably easier to use than the previous types. To use these, you insert your lug between the dies, set your hydraulic release to the locked position, and then simply crank the lever repeatedly to complete your crimp. Finally, and by far my personal favorite, we have our powered hydraulic crimper. These work on the same concept as the manual hydraulic crimper, but eliminate the need to manually crank the lever for your crimp. Simply set your hydraulic release to the locked position and squeeze the trigger until complete. That's it. To prepare, I've cut 4 lengths of EB Flex 1/0 welding wire and trimmed back the insulation. We'll be using 100% copper lugs with our golden ceramic PVD coating available exclusively from Glowe Voltage. If you thought all copper lugs were equal, you should check out our other videos on this subject to learn why these are even better. First up, we're going to test the hammer crimper. I've sat this on our warehouse floor and definitely would not recommend attempting this on any sort of table or countertop. After hitting it a couple of times, you can see here it leaves a plus mark kind of engraved at the point of the crimp. Next, I'm going to crimp the other side. I'm going to do the same thing starting off at the beginning, but I'm going to hit it a few times actually, and then I'm going to spin the lug, and I'm going to do this from several different angles. So I'm going to crimp the top, then I'm going to do it on the bottom, and then I'm going to do it on the side as well, just to make sure that we're giving this device every opportunity it can. And afterward, this is our finished result. It's not the prettiest crimp, but it is done on several sides, as you can see here. And we will cut this open in a couple moments. Next up, we have our lever style crimpers. Here I have the die set to 50, which is what it should be typically for 1/0. And as you see here, these you have to squeeze pretty hard, so in order to get this fully crimped, I kind of sat the handles on the table and put most of my body weight against the handle before, finally crimped out. And this is the final crimp. My main concern with this one is it seems very narrow compared to the actual hydraulic crimp styles. So we're going to go ahead and crimp this with a 35 on the other side as well, just so we get some comparison and see how well it did. Okay, so here is the 35. I did get my dies reset, and as you're about to see, this is considerably more difficult. For one, because the die is a bit smaller than recommended, but you know, at the end of the day, if you were going to get a pair of these, I would highly recommend making sure that you get a set with the longer handles, because, you know, I literally have to push my entire body weight down against this to finally get it crimped. And here's the result, though. The result does appear to be, I mean, it's a really solid crimp. It has a bit of a wing, but you can definitely see where the crimpers bit down into the copper to crimp this. So we'll cut this open in a moment as well. Here we have our hydraulic crimpers. So I do set the hydraulic to the lock position. This is a size 50 die, and I just crank the lever until the dies meet. Again, this is significantly easier than using the lever style, and not a lot of force is actually needed to operate this. The result, as you can see here, is a nice hexagonal crimp, six-sided, so it looks compressed evenly from all sides. No wings, no bite marks into the actual lug itself. Next, we are going to use the size 35 dies and do the same crimp again with these hydraulic crimpers. So just get it in place. And this one I do have to squeeze a bit harder than the last one was very easy. But again, this is because of the slightly undersized die. So we'll give it a couple of tight squeezes here, and then we'll check out the crimp. So on this crimp, it definitely left some wings protruding off the side, which isn't ideal, but it did make a nice and solid looking crimp. Again, mostly hexagonal here, except for the wings where the die was too small, and we will cut it open and have a look. Finally, and by far my favorite, the powered hydraulic crimper. These things changed my life as someone who crimps a lot of lugs. Let's get the lug in place. Pull the trigger, and then we'll check out the crimp. As you can see, it is once again a nice hexagonal crimp. It looks like it was squeezed equally from all six sides. This is a size 50 die, no wings, and everything looks good, so we'll cut it open after we do our final crimp. Okay, and this time with the size 35 on the powered hydraulic crimpers. Oh, forgot to have the hydraulic in the lock position. And just squeeze the trigger. And this one's not going to close completely because again it is undersized. So just make sure that the crimp is complete. And then we will check out the crimp itself. So much like the hydraulic crimper, and you know they do use interchangeable dies, so explicably so. This one does have the same style of wings that we saw previously, but overall the crimp looks very secure. So let's check them all out now.
Alright guys, so we have Daniel here who's going to cut these in half. We're going to start with the one that the hammer one, the hammer crimp. So here's this one again. I don't want to focus on it. Here we go. You can see it has a little plus there, and then the other side was where we hit it multiple times. So cutting this one in half.
This is the single hit. On the world's smallest vise. No
Okay,
fusion.
you can see that. That was not cold welded with the single hit. Now let's try the side where I hit it multiple times. Yeah, I just poured out the copper. Oh, did that one actually? So the wire fell out, but it looks like we did have a pretty good grip before that. So the wire that we saw fall was just not part of the crimp, but it does look pretty crimped there.
Yeah, that looks pretty close to solid.
We'll check it out up closer in a few minutes.
Okay.
And next up we have the lever. So we'll start with this side was the 50 and then the other was the 35.
Okay, so 50 crimp.
Yep.
And these were the bolt cutter style.
Yep.
Surprising result.
Well, when you're cutting, I think it's sliding right towards the edge of the. Was it cold welded?
So
that one was, yeah.
That one was where it was crimped, but this is interesting.
Yeah. So beyond where we crimp, because it's so narrow.
It's all just strand.
So on that one, maybe if you crimp more than once, but you can see right there how it is a solid
50.
chunk. That was the 50. Yeah, that was the 50. The next one's the 35 because it's smaller and actually winged it a little bit more.
I'm trying to cut them as close to right in the middle of the crimps as possible, so. There again, that looks like the end strands are falling out, but both sides of that look good. That would be the 35.
Okay. So now we're going to do the hydraulic crimpers. Start with the 50 and then go to the 35. Here's the 50.
The manual hydraulic, correct?
Yep.
Loose strands, but still a good, nice portion there on the cross cut.
That was on the 50 or the 35 side?
It's going to be 50.
Okay.
Again with the loose stranding above the crimp. It's going to be the 35.
Now here's the first time with the 35 that the strands on the opposite side of the cut also look.
I think that just depends right where you cut it.
I've been cutting them as close to in half as I can of the crimp area, but that.
Okay. Well, here's the powered hydraulic.
Okay.
Make sure to keep these ones separate from the other one because there's no other way to tell them apart.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the 50 side.
50 side. Yeah.
Now on the other side of this, I actually crimped it twice. I went back and put another crimp on it. So I crimped it twice
Okay.
to make sure, to see if we could get just a solid chunk.
50 here seems okay. Here is still loose stranding, even above the crimp. You can see it's hexed. So it did crimp there, but did not
Cold weld.
keep the stranding. That 35 is pretty, or
Yeah, 35. That looks good. Here. Okay. So, all right, I'll go to the table and we will check all these out.
okay.
So first, what we have here is this was the hammer crimp where it was only crimped from one side. Perhaps if I had hit it some more, it would have stuck, but this was the only one that downright failed. Next is the hammer crimp where I actually hit it from multiple different angles. You can see this is drastically different. The wiring did hold, and it does look like it is cold welded. This appears to be a mostly solid chunk of copper inside of here, which is the result that you want to see. Here we have the lever saw crimper. You can see just a slight deformation there. Just a bit of a wing, but you can see where it definitely bit into the copper, but it does appear that this created a successful cold weld in the 1/0, leaving a solid chunk of copper inside of the lug when we were done. Next, when we were using the 35 with the lever style, this was one that was so difficult. It definitely deformed the lug. You can see the wing out to one side specifically. But as far as the crimp itself, this is definitely a cold weld. Very solid chunk of copper inside, and I consider it a successful crimp all in all. Here's the first hydraulic crimp. It was a nice hexagon, so you can see all 6 sides here are kind of evenly pressed in. There's no wings, and inside we have a solid chunk of copper remaining, which would indicate that we have a successful cold weld here. Okay, using the size 35 die with the hydraulic crimpers. Once again, we definitely have a cold weld, but you can tell that there's wings to either side here. It did successfully crimp everything though, so I mean, as far as a positive cold weld, this definitely did the trick. Solid piece of copper. Now, these results are largely the same as the hydraulic crimper. Again, the dies are interchangeable, so we should be seeing pretty much identical here. This was the size 50 die, so nice crimp, even all the way around, no wings, solid cold weld, solid chunk of copper in the middle. And finally, the piece that actually doubled back and made sure to crimp it twice. So I crimped this one kind of low down, and then I crimped it further up as well, just to see if we could stop the issue with the strands falling out from the tip and create a larger cold weld, which we definitely succeeded at doing. This was a size 35, but you can see on both sides here it was easy to just cut middle and cut right through the crimp, as opposed to, cutting it where there were strands remaining in the lug afterwards. So, definitely solid crimp, and if anything was learned here, it would be that it is definitely worth it to double crimp, along the length of these lugs. Here is a quick final look at all of the crimps side by side. So, from lessons learned today, I would definitely recommend, if you're using a hammer style crimper, that you hit it from multiple angles to make sure that your crimp is secure. Other than that, all of the crimp styles did successfully create cold welds, and I would say pass the crimp test. Other than that, I would definitely recommend perhaps crimping twice along the length of your lugs, because as we saw today, typical crimp was leaving a fair amount of loose copper strandings in the upper part of the lug that can be avoided and used to make an even better crimp by just crimping it a second time after you're done with the first time. If you have any questions, just let me know. If there's any tests you'd like to see, leave it in the comments down below. Have a good one, everyone.